Okay, I've got the description wrong on the video, which is a great start for the first live stream I've done in quite some time. So let's go and correct that before we go any further. So YouTube Studio. Live, and let's edit the details. Once that's done, save it. And then monitor my own live stream so I can see what people are saying and respond if necessary. Getting there slowly, please bear with me. Okay, Sarah Paradiski is saying afternoon. Good afternoon. So I won't be monitoring the live stream just yet. I've got to get the aircraft started up, so let's go and sort that out. We're in 747 at Lisbon. If we show you the flight plan very briefly, we are going to take off from Lisbon, fly down to Bexel, and then fly along an airway to Conbat, and then do the Conbat 4G approach into Tenerife, and come in. It's going to be a little bit interesting. It depends on the 747 if it will let me reprogram this. Otherwise, we could have some fun and games on the approach, because you will notice you come in on the VOR directly into the middle of the route. So I guess one way to do that is to go into the hold pattern here, which we could do if the 747 supports doing holds. Otherwise we won't. But if we can modify it, we can go through the DME route and line up for ILS that way, which is just as easy. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see when we get there what it supports. Okay, let's go and get the airplane started up, shall we? So Control 7 takes us overhead. So this is me just checking really that this still works as it used to. Okay, so battery uncaged, press the battery light, recage it. Standby power selector to auto. External power 1 and 2 on if it's available. And it is not. That's interesting. APU to start. And it should come up all on its own. So I'll give it a few seconds for that to happen. So it should revert to on, which it has done on the switch. We just have to wait for APU to become available. So then APU Gen 1 and 2 go to on. So let's go and have a listen around the back, see if we can hear that. Yeah, you can see heat pouring out. God, I haven't flown this airplane for ages. There we go, we've got APU available. So we're going to turn on the power from the APU by switching over to it. So then Control and 8, we go further overhead. The 3 nav systems have to go to nav. Oops. There we go. Emergency lights go to armed. So that's further down. So that's Control 7, isn't it? Oh no, sorry. Second column at the top, emergency lights are up here, so that goes down to... Did that actually arm it? So that's off. It's difficult to see, isn't it? Then Control 7. And the external lights, nav to on. So just over here. Window heat to on. I'm trying to remember where everything is. Wing anti-ice goes to auto. Where is the wing anti-ice gone? Am I being blind? It should be right here. Oh, here we go. Then flight management computer, so Control and 4 takes us down to the flight management computer. We'll skid over to one side to get a good look at it. So pause init, and we pick up the GPS position, drop it into the IRS. That makes that disappear. So it'll be interesting to see how much this has changed. So our reference airport should be Lisbon. So ICAO code is Lima Papa Papa Tango. So Lima Papa Papa Tango into the scratch pad, drop it into the reference, and there we go. We don't need to put a gate number in. Go to the route page. We still don't get that carrying over, which I believe the Boeing FMCs all do, but a real pilot would have to confirm that. Golf Charlie Tango Sierra for Tenerife. Make up a flight number. And the runway we are departing on is runway 02. Activate the route. Execute it. And we can go to performance initialization, and we should be able to get the 0 fuel weight automatically, and we can. This is looking very reminiscent of the 737s now, isn't it? So we'll put in just 1 ton of fuel reserve. Cruise altitude is going to be 360 or 36,000 feet. Cost index we'll put in 100. And execute that. It's a good point actually. When we did the earlier part of this, we didn't. I didn't put a route in, did I? Next. Yeah, so we want to go. Direct to Bexel. Bexal. B-E-X-A-L. And then we're taking UN866 to Cubil. UN866. Okay, that had a delay on it, didn't it? So delete that one. It was just taking a while to process. It's funny how some of the airplanes do that. And that goes down to Conba, sorry, not Cubil. Conba, yeah. K-O-N-B-A. K-O-N-B-A. Which is the beginning of the standard terminal arrival route into Tenerife. So then go to departure arrival. So we are departing from Lisbon on the Busi 3N standard instrument departure. Execute that. Come back to the index. We are arriving on the Combi 4G. We're not using a transition. We're going to use ILS 70. This is where it's going to get interesting. So it's suggesting BAML, which is correct. But we're going to go and see if we can put in. Yeah, let's see if we can do it. So rather than Combi 4G, rather than the ILS, we'll go for the VOR DME. So Combi 4G is correct. Let's go next page. VOR 07, I'm guessing it must be listed as. Transition BAML, execute. So then if we go and look in legs, let's see if we can fix it. Because what it will normally do in flight sim, it usually gets this wrong. So Ganta, Bamel, these. Oh yes, yeah. Look, this TFS has appeared twice. So let's see if we can pull this back up over here. Oh, it's put the hold in. Interesting. Well, that makes things a lot easier for us then. So it's pre-programmed the hold. So what it's going to do is put it straight into this hold. And then we can just program the ILS while we're in the hold. Okay, we'll leave it like that. That's fine. We haven't done all of the performance stuff yet, so let's go into performance initialization. We want to go to thrust and takeoff and put in flaps. I think it's 10 degrees, is it, for the 747? That calculates the numbers. Do we get... yeah, center of gravity is done as well, 7.5. Let's just pull back a little bit from here. Where's the trim gauge? Yeah, there we go, stabilator. So we need to go and put that in the middle. So I'm just doing that now. Ba-dum. Okay. So we can leave that on the legs page now. We didn't have any discontinuities, I don't think. I'll just go and double check that. So I'll look through the legs. Next page, next page, next page. It's rare that you get discontinuities if you put the route in. So master control panel next. Calibrate altimeters, so press B to shortcut doing that. There they go. Flight directors to on. And they have both switched on at the same time. Pre-select departure runway heading. So let's go and look. We're taking off runway 02. If we go and cheat and look at LittleNavMap a little bit. One of the nice things about LittleNavMap is it makes it very clear what the runway direction is, so it's 24 degrees. So we're just going to go and program that into the heading. Oh, we go the other way. We're going to 36,000 feet. Way. One day I'll get good at this. Okay, we should, with the flight directors on and no discontinuities, be able to pre-select LNAV and VNAV, and we can. And we should actually be able to go and set vertical speed as well. Will it allow us to? Yeah, it will. So if we went for like 2,000 feet a minute, or 2,500, something like that, 2,000 we'll go for. But if we go to VNAV, obviously, yeah, it will favour one over the other. We can arm the auto throttle. So as soon as we switch on, it should all kick in and start looking after itself. So VNAV should take care of the speed once the auto throttles, once the autopilot is on. Okay, just looking through. ECAS control 3. Yeah, we've set the stab trim. We've done that. So control 7 overhead. Fuel pumps. That one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. What about these? Do they not need to be on anymore? It's rare that you have fuel in the stabilators or the center tanks. We just have a quick look at that, see what we've got. We could do it on the screens, or we can do it up here as well. Where have we got fuel? Nothing in the reserves, nothing in the stabilator tanks. Nothing in the center wing tank. Yeah, we just got main tanks, that's fine. Okay, so at this point we would perform pushback. We don't need to today. If we have a look outside, there's nothing in front of us. We've got plenty of room to spin around and go over to the runway, which is behind us over here. So back in the cockpit, control 7, beacon lower to both down, so control 7. beacon to both. Engine bleed. Check the APU is on. It is. Engine bleed 1, 2, 3 and 4 should go to on. And then pull the starter for engine number 4. Look down in the cockpit. We should see the numbers going up. There they go. N2 is coming up for engine number 4. When it gets to 20, we can flick the start switch to run for engine number 4. While this is happening, do a quick check. So yeah, we've got Sim Update 13, so I'm just looking at the live stream comments now. External power via the EFB. Good point. Yeah, I didn't have... Well, there isn't... Is there... I don't think there is an EFB, is there? In the stock 747. I haven't got any mod on it, so this is as it comes out of the box. Okay, so we've got the first engine. Then we go engine number 3. And we can see N2 is climbing, engine number 3. This is the vanilla 747 with Sim Update 13. So someone's saying if you select a vertical speed, it will override. But interestingly though, look, they both light up. So that's an interesting... I'm guessing that means as soon as it gets to the first restriction, it will kick in with killing the vertical speed, I'm guessing. You'd have to read the pilot operating handbook for that one. Oh, this is going flat out on the APU and not igniting or filling fuel into the engine. So we wait for the plunger to fall in on engine number 3, the start plunger. When it falls in, we can pull a number 2. There we go. The reason for doing them one after another is obviously you've only got one. You've got a quantity of air pressure to use. So if you pull all of the plungers at once, you're then opening the valves to all of the engines for the same amount of air pressure. So it's going to be a lot slower at doing that. I've not flown the 747 for ages in the simulator. Kivo Zenji, I hope I've said that correctly. I can't believe I'm catching a live stream of yours. Love your reviews and watch each of them, even if I'm not interested in the product. Yeah, there's quite a lot of the aircraft I'm not interested in as well. I've been kind of cornered into doing a few military aircraft recently, and I really can't see the point of them in Flight Simulator, to be honest. They're a bit of a anachronism, I guess. I need to get back to DCS, but it's time at the moment. The last month I've been doing a running challenge, which you'll have seen me post about. I ran 100 kilometres during the month to raise funds for a hospital called Great Ormond Street in London, a children's hospital. So I've been pretty much consumed with that. My legs are a bit broken now, though, having run 100 kilometres, so I'm sitting down today, hence being sat in front of the simulator. But yeah, I completed the 100 kilometres yesterday morning. Or sorry, yesterday lunchtime. Okay, so engines are up and running. So, control 7. Plunger has fallen back in, so APU can go back to off now. It cross-feeds the power over itself. I'm just trying to remember where the APU is. APU can come off. Oh, the air bleed stays on, doesn't it, for the environmental control system? So pumps 1, 2, 3 and 4 go to auto. So this is the hydraulic pumps I'm thinking about now. So that's over here. So they go to auto, 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 and auto. The packs 1, 2, and 3 go to on. So that's the environmental control. Taxi light goes to on. And we'll go and check for any messages down here. So what have we got saying? Doors are on auto, APU is running, which it can stay on. Well, it will come off on its own, I should say. Auto brake is at 1. So yeah, there's something else to think about there. We need to go and set auto brake to rejected takeoff if it will let us. Interestingly, look. So, what's causing that? I can't. Okay, what they've done is hooked it up to the Airbus controller's brake at last, which means I can't actually get it to rejected takeoff. So we're not going to worry about it. We need to set the flaps to 10 degrees, so we're just going to move the controller here. You can see the flaps travelling. And get out to the runway, I guess. So I'm going to turn head tracking on at this point. Come off the parking brake. Oh, something else I hadn't thought of. Control options. I need the 4-engine configuration for the quadrant. There it was. Apply, you go back, resume. Okay, I also need the limiters on the throttles, so I don't go into reverse. There we go, that's better. The aeroplane started to roll backwards briefly then. Just trying to remind myself, so transponder and TCAS over here. Let's go in. We're doing this a little bit out of order. You shouldn't really do this to go in the air, but or certainly at the holding point. But we're going to do it a little bit early. And yeah, look how small that aeroplane looks down there. Compared to the 747, it's like a toy, isn't it? I guess we followed the yellow line just to keep away from everything. Okay, just turn the head tracking off for a moment so I can look at the tablet without you looking down at the corner of the cockpit. Landing lights. They can probably come on now, can't they? Are they up here somewhere? Yeah, there they are. And strobes to on. Over here somewhere. There we go. Now, is that a double position switch? No, it's only one position. Okay. head tracking back on so we can have a look. There's nothing coming, I don't think. Okay, let's have a look at this outside. We're nearly straight. It's straight to a fashion. It's being a little bit jerky, isn't it? It's nice long runway here then. Let's just have a quick look at the checklist, see if there's anything else I need to deal with. TCAS is on. Yeah, throttles go to toga. Rotate 160 knots or following the callouts. And then gear up, taxi lights off, and then climb out. Manage flaps, engage auto throttle, check autopilot. So what engage autopilot's auto throttle is already on, so it should kick in with the VNav. We'll see what happens with that. That'll be interesting. Okay. So we're just running just below 100% on the engines. Let's put them up a little bit more. $130, $140, $150, $160, and the nose is coming up. That's the trim kicking in, look. So let's pull up gently. Gear up. On the speed. Flaps can come up to 5 degrees now. So let's see what happens then. So if I go and engage the autopilot now, it's going to drop the nose gently. Go, yes, we've just missed the turn there with the autopilot, so it will catch that back up. So what's going to happen with the, yeah, it's gone for the VNav now, so it's dropped vertical speed, and VNav obviously will take care of speed as well. So the auto throttle's on, so that's entirely normal at that point. So it will be going for a target airspeed, look, of 250 knots. So we'll get the flaps all the rest of the way up now. Tremendously boring now. If we go and look at the departure, where are we? Down here. So we've just done that first turn. So the aeroplane will be turning again very soon. Just coming up to 5,000 feet. Has this chart got the transition altitude on it? 4,000 feet, which we've already gone through. So we can go for standard barometric pressure already. Is that synchronized? Yes, it is. Do we get that on the standby as well? On the baro? We do now. So coming up, so taxi light can come off, as I didn't do. When we come through 10,000 feet, the landing lights can come off as well. Let's increase the range on the navigation display so we can see what's coming. So you can see the only restriction there is we have to be above 6,000. It was above 3,000 at the first turn, above 6,000 here. So we're way ahead of schedule in terms of the climb profile. So it's just come through 10,000 feet, so the landing lights can come off. And that's us done, really. It's on autopilot now. There's nothing to do. Kind of go make a coffee. Oops, lean back too far, put my head through the seat. Let's turn the head tracking off for a moment. Very clear sky today. I think I've got the weather on. Should we just check? Yeah, it's on live weather, real time. So just catching up to the live stream comments now. Now we can sit back and enjoy the flight. So we got Kevo saying grazie. Tim O'Haran, currently virtually flying my Diamond DA62 from San Francisco to Las Vegas while watching my in-flight Jonathan Beckett movie. Nice to catch you travelling on to one of your favourite places. Well, favourite place this week. Only because I just bought the scenery, so it's still, you know, of interest. It's an interesting approach into Tenerife because it has these various machinations with, you know, the ways you can come in, and on the. This is obviously going to put it into the hold, as far as I've seen in the FMC, with the options that were available in the 747, and then we come out of the hold when we're heading towards the runway, which will be quite interesting. So we'll come in. Does it give us details for the hold here? Circle to land, 1720 feet. Okay, 180 knots. That's easy enough. Max 230. And a 10-mile hold. I wonder if that was programmed in accurately. Can we see that on the hold instruction? So if we go next page, and you'll see hold at TFS. I don't think you can see the details of a hold, can you? No, that won't do it. Oh great, this is the bit where the lever gets in the way of the buttons. Can we get past it? No. Oh, silly thing. Control 4, is it? There we go. So in the hold, we can see the TFS is here. It's just got a 1 minute leg time, not a distance. That's interesting then. Because this is here is saying a 10-mile hold, unless it's doing that one. That looks shorter than a minute though, but anyway, we'll see. It's not going to be difficult. There's always something interesting that crops up on a flight, isn't there? We haven't put the TFC view on, have we? There we go. Does this have the... No, it doesn't have the side view that the 737s have. That's a shame. But then I guess you get this one for free. So you can't complain too much. So what company made this 747? This is the stock 747 you get with Flight Simulator. it's been continually updated. It's had a pretty significant update with the last big sim update, which brought it more up to speed of where it should have been. But they keep fixing bugs in it as they go forwards. But yeah, it's a 747-8i, which I think you can see somewhere. Does it say it somewhere on the livery? I'm sure that it does, actually. But it's basically the last version, the last, passenger version of the 747 that was made. So it is, glass cockpit and all the rest of it. So let's go and have a look at the legs page and see what this is doing. So it's on its way to Busan at the moment. Flight level 296 it's predicting to get there at, or it's working to get there at, and then it'll be getting to Bexal for FL or 360 or 36,000 feet. So if we zoom out slightly, yeah, you can see top of climb is being indicated. So we do have the green banana now, which is quite cool. So on descent we can play games with using vertical speed mode if we wish to judge our descent rate down into the various waypoints, or just let VNav get on with it. I don't like using VNav. It takes the work away from you, which, for real pilots, probably a great thing, because they have to concentrate on unruly passengers and talking to air traffic control and all the rest of it, which we're not having to deal with here. I'm looking forward to, is it Beyond ATC is coming out soon? That should be good fun. So, Junebug said, why didn't I use the toggle button? I hardly ever do. I like flying the aeroplane. Pressing buttons that make everything happen for you seems a bit boring to me. Obviously, if you've got lots of other stuff going on, like for example, if I had ATC and I was having to talk to them, then I might be using more automation. It's like typically you'll see me as soon as I get lined up with the runway on the big jets, I'll disable the autopilot and fly it in. I really, really don't like using things like auto land. I think, that's how you keep your skills up, is actually doing things. Quite often recently I've been flying some of the SIDS and stars myself by hand, just, to, as I said, keep the skills going. The jetliners do get boring, but it does give you the opportunity to go make a coffee while you're en route, which is quite good. So does this have the progress page where we can get ETAs? We get route data now, which does work, brilliant. So that gives you your ETA, on each leg of the journey. So we'll be looking to start managing our descent some point after Conba. So we know Conba 15:53 we should get there. Get a clock in the cabin on this. Yeah, it's up there, look. 15. Oh, that's the estimated time, I think, for the next waypoint. Do we not get the current time? Am I being dim here? Maybe not. Maybe that's where you have a wrist on your... sorry, a wristwatch. Time will be here somewhere. I'm just being blind, I'm guessing. Checklist incomplete. So this aircraft does have checklists in the FMC, and I haven't done that, so naughty me. So Simon says hi. I don't get this whole competition thing between, or comparisons between Boeing and Airbus all the time. They're both very good. They're just very different philosophies. In a way, because Boeing have legacy, they were here first and they had planes before the modern equipment came in. they're held back in some ways because they rely on tried and trusted ways of doing things, whereas Airbus had the opportunity to kind of rewrite their own rulebook, or write it for the first time, I should say. It is interesting though, you look at things like the Airbus A310 and you can see where they borrowed ideas from the way Boeing do things. So the further you go back, they all kind of converge on common methods. Airbus isn't better, or I don't think so, it's just different. Okay, we're within 1,000 feet, or 900 feet I should say, of the target altitude, so that's where we just heard the beep. Got a 42 knot headwind. It's going to be a little while until we get down to the destination. So probably an hour or so, I would imagine. Do we get... Have we gone... Has this got progress? Yes, it has. So that gives you... Again, it gives you ETAs. It doesn't give you burn down times. That's a bit of a shame. But this does give you distances, look. So Conba is... what, 380, 400 miles away. We are cruising along now at 287 indicated, Mach 0.85. So ground speed is probably about, was it 500, 490 in a 747? 454 at the moment. Okay, that's fine. We could go a bit quicker if we wanted to. It's always worth having a bit of leeway though, because like we've got a headwind. If the wind were to increase in our face, it could close up that gap quite rapidly. Yeah, I completely agree with what the Sim channel is saying there. Pilots, it's rare that you get pilots that have done both. I've found from the things I've read, and they're all quite magnanimous. The best quote I've ever heard was a friend of mine, who one of his friends is a commercial pilot, and he got the opportunity to sit in the seat at the back of the cockpit during a flight and watch. And he was just on condition he was sat there quietly, didn't interfere with anything. They signed him off and said, "Yeah, you can sit there and watch. It's fine." And he said it was like watching somebody driving a digger. The way that the professional crews go about their job with operating the switches and doing things, everything to them was normal and routine. They knew where everything was. There was no figuring anything out. Everything was natural and calm and normal. Even when things had to be changed, for example, it was completely normal and calm and no different than if you're driving a car down the road and maybe there's something in the way and you go around it. It's not a big thing. And that was his main takeaway from watching a professional crew flying the aeroplane, was how routine everything was. I guess if you're flying the aeroplane day in, day out, you might be doing 2 or 3 flights in a day. I'm not sure how that works with workload, with it's not really stress, is it? But to avoid mistakes and tiredness, I'm not sure how many hours in a given day a flight crew are allowed to do, or how many flights. I think it's probably 2 short flights. I'm not sure how it works. So Chad is asking, which airliner do I prefer to fly in Flight Simulator? Probably the 737. Mainly because I know it well, it's very flexible, and a lot of it is implemented on the PMDG 737s. So, you know, there's a lot to play with, and everything works and does what it should. Quite close behind that is probably the MD82 family, is it? MD80 family? The Mad Dogs from Leonardo. They are great fun. And then not far behind that, maybe the Airbus A310. The one I've not really spent much time with, and I really should because it's been massively upgraded, is the 787, which is now hugely better than it once was. The Phoenix A320 is very good, but I will admit I prefer gauges and switches over glass cockpits. So that's why I edge towards the older airliners, for example. And that's why I kind of always been fascinated and get the videos out with things like the Antonov AN2 and the is it the 225, the Maria, sorry. But yeah, anything that involves lots of switches and dials and gauges, I really love the mechanical nature of figuring out what does what's connected to what, and figuring out. That's part of the reason the ATR has frustrated me enormously, is because although people will say, oh, you know, if you flick these switches in exactly the right order, then you can get the prop brake to work properly. But that doesn't get away from the fact that the pneumatic system, or sorry, the hydraulics on it aren't working as they should. You know, you power various systems up, you get the various lights to go to the correct statuses, and still things don't quite work all the time as they should, and it's really frustrating sometimes. Yep, just reading Chad's comment about Concorde. The DC Designs, is it, that made the Concorde? It's quite for DC Designs it's a very good aeroplane, but there's a lot of shortcomings in it, and they have admitted themselves over time they don't have, or didn't have, the funds or the time scales for, you know, for the release schedule to get professional 3D artists to build the cockpit out for them. So whether they'll make another one, I'm not sure. I think there's just been a study level Concorde released for P3D, hasn't there? Or was it for X-Plane? I can't remember. I remember reading about it just before I went on holiday. Another aircraft that's coming out soon in the sim that I think will be good is the MD-11. McDonnell Douglas. It should be good fun. Yeah, there's quite a few. There's the Aerosoft are making an A330 as well, aren't they? Right, I am going to go and make a coffee. So what I'll do, I'll leave this on the outside view. Have you noticed this graphic anomaly that's appeared since Sim Update 13? There's a polygon in the middle of the stream. Now, whether that's an NVIDIA issue or not, or it's something they've messed up, I'm not sure. I noticed that in a few different aeroplanes. There's now this polygon in the middle of the jet stream. So let's go and put this on Windows, open window layout, minimal. Then you get to see where I am quite easily. And I'll go to taskbar settings, hide the taskbar. And I'm going to cut my microphone for a bit, and I'll be back a bit later on. Okay, I'm back. Just inadvertently cut my own microphone off. So running at 88% on the engines, 285 knots, Mach 0.85. See, if we went a bit higher, the 747 can do Mach 0.9. We'll stick to 36,000 though. So, looking at the approach into Tenerife, you'll notice there are no altitude restrictions on the way in, but there are some just targets really. So once we get down onto the actual approach, it's not on this chart, but yeah, you can see there's one over here, but that's not to do with us. If we go and look on the actual approach, then suddenly you get some numbers to deal with. So you're wanting to be 4,700 feet at D10. So that's out here. So when you do make that turn in, if you're doing, it's doing like a step descent to get onto the ILS. If you were using ILS, or if you're not, then obviously, you follow the numbers. We can cheat to a certain extent. We could go and look up the chart for the ILS for GCTS as well. So if we go to information for the airport, to open the airport, go to the charts, go to the approaches and look up ILS, and we can pin this as well, so we can have both charts down here. So if we look here, we suddenly get all of the numbers for the ILS. There's the feathers. So we want 109.7 and 073 degrees. It'd be interesting to see what this has got pre-programmed. So if we go into nav radios, at the moment it's got 113.9. And ILS has got nothing in there. Which is interesting. So let's see if it will allow us to put 109.7 in. No, it won't. So we may have to do that visual approach. I mean, we can put the 109.7 into the VOR and then put the course in of 73 degrees. Oh, it's 1073 maybe. Yeah. And we could do the same on the other side, 109.7. And 073. The advantage of putting in both sides is you can then use dual mode on the autopilot when you get the localizer. It's interesting this is not letting us choose the ILS though. What if we select that? What's it going to do? Nothing. Okay. Obviously we could just reprogram the approach and then it would pre-populate itself with all the ILS data, but it's the same basically as doing the VOR yourself. And then when you switch over to approach mode, this will show the data. So yeah, just on about the spammers and scammers and stuff, I have to be really careful. We have to be careful at work as well. When you're typing addresses into a browser, people can pay to get prominence in the suggested sites as you type. So you end up having to be really careful about what you type, because, you know, unwanted sites, let's put it that way, unwanted sites will appear that have got paid prominence in suggested results. And it's, yeah, it becomes really difficult, especially if you're doing like a corporate presentation and you're wanting to show something as a facet of the public internet. And you may sometimes, unless you've got a corporate firewall which is blocking that sort of stuff, which, you know, it may come up as a suggested thing, but you won't actually get there anyway. But it just still looks unprofessional sometimes if you see things, you know, being suggested that really shouldn't be there. Anyway, you can see we're coming in towards Conbat. One of the advantages LittleNavMap has over Navigraph is it has the distances of each leg, so you can do some mental arithmetic. So for example, if we go and zoom in on this, look, we get the distances. So we know it's about 100 miles, isn't it, to descend. So we can wait until we get to Brick. I mean, it's saying top of descent here. We can wait until we get to Brick before we need to worry about descending. Because we've got 90 miles along this leg, and then we're just managing the descent down. There isn't any specific altitudes on the descent, so you're looking to get basically to a couple of thousand feet by the time we get down to the VOR, which would put us into the hold if we're going to do that route, which is only really drawn in Navigraph, not in LittleNavMap. LittleNavMap doesn't understand how to do this at all. It's worth pointing out. So the aircraft, as far as we've seen when we programmed it in, is going to come in here and go straight into the hold, although it did have TFS twice. The aircraft messed this up as well. But then the 737 messes it up as well, and you have to go in and correct the flight plan by hand. It's just a bit of a messy approach, that's all. So, yeah, this one doesn't have the ILS feathers on it, look, whereas this one does. It's almost the same chart, it just has extra information. Okay. Looks like there's some weather approaching. Should we go and have a look at the METAR for the destination? Weather for Tenerife. So we got 130 degrees, 8 knot wind, a few clouds, 3,500 feet. Yeah, there's nothing really. Just bits of mist up in the high altitude, but nothing to speak of. Pretty good. If we zoom out this a bit, we can see out to the destination. Probably there's Conbaluk, and there's the island. It's still, what's the range this is showing at the moment? 640, so it's 400 miles out yet. Take a little while. Right, I'm going to put it back on a nice view of the aeroplane flying along and put LittleNavMap back up. So you can see how close we are getting. What I could do is put some range rings on, I guess, so we can get an easy comparison. So if you add range rings in LittleNavMap, we'll have them at, say, 100 miles and 200, 300, 400 miles, and go wallop, and then we can see those rings now, so we can see how close we're getting. Why didn't I use data link for the FMC programming? Because I like programming the FMC. That's a nice easy question. So Ed E is asking, can I find any of these charts on LittleNavMap? No, you can't. LittleNavMap doesn't have charts, but what you can do, if you open a browser and go to ChartFox, you can see there, look, it's coming up with suggested sites, which are not what I want to be seeing. Let's do it here, ChartFox. And we log in. And we got VATSIM over here. So we got VATSIM is free to log in. Allow. So ChartFox, let's go and see if it's got anything for GCTS, which we're going towards. So this is publicly accessible free charts. Welcome to ChartFox. Yeah, great. Well done. I'm not sure what it's going to have. So the various stars. AAC, so that's the information pages. It's a bit slow, isn't it? Well, it's being slow. Try going direct. But if we pick a different airport, for example, let's go for EGSS, which is Stansted. Yeah, you get the charts in categories if it's got all of them. So then you could go and say, look at the star and say, or the SID. Say we will look for the BKY 5R. Where is it? Runway 4, 22. Here we go, 22. It hasn't got all of them, look, it's only got a few of them, which is a shame. But, oh, there's the BKY. Yeah, so it's on that one. So can we rotate this? So you can still see, it's a way of getting some charts, is to go to chartfox.org. Okay? And it's free. But it's, you know, beggars can't be choosers, it's obviously not going to be as good as looking at a Navigraph chart. Having said that, these charts don't have as much information always as LittleNavMap has when it actually draws the route. But if you are looking to learn how the real airline pilots, you know, receive this information, then these are very similar to the real thing. I don't know if they got, yeah, they've got Jeppesen logo. The originals are drawn by Jeppesen for, you know, for production use in the real world. There's just a legal disclaimer down here, look, Navigraph, intended for flight sim only. But the original was actually drawn by Jeppesen. While we're flying along, one of the things I have been looking into is called Sky Demon, I think it's called, which is a real world UK based, or sorry, European based flight sim navigation software. If we go and get, oh, it won't actually let us see it, will it? If I pull up a video to show you it. No, there's nothing. The website isn't anything to shout about. The actual software is fantastic though. It's a navigation software, a little bit like LittleNavMap, but for VFR. Here we go. So if we... Oh, they've only got low resolution on the screenshots, that's a shame. Here you go, you've got some excerpts here, the sort of things it can show you. So it's really designed for the real world, but you can get a plug-in for it to plug it into Flight Simulator. So you can use a real-world professional tool to do your flight routing and flight tracking. And it's got all the notices to airmen and all that kind of stuff, and flight tracking of other aircraft around you. I'm not sure if it will pick up multiplayer aircraft actually. That would be an interesting one to look at. But yeah, it's quite expensive. It's like $100 a year, but then so is Navigraph. Anyway, so ChartFox is free. How many frames per second do I have? I look at 30. So I don't understand people obsessing over frame rate. I've got an NVIDIA 3080 card, which is plenty good enough basically. It runs in Ultra and I lock it down to 30 frames a second, which stops the computer from cooking itself. It's really not worth pushing Flight Sim any more than that because it's single threaded. That's apparently going to be addressed in Flight Sim 2024. So you'll notice it when you're approaching airports and stuff and it starts putting in the ground traffic. You'll see the sim start stuttering. It's because it has got the headroom to do it all. It's only got one pipeline to do everything through though, so it starts stuttering when it's overloaded with things to do, like loading off of disk, or sorry, loading from storage. So when it starts loading complex aircraft models and textures in, it causes the actual flight modelling to stutter. So yeah, so I don't worry about frame rate at all. Yeah, Sky Vector is another good one, so I'll just briefly show that to people who maybe haven't seen it. It's a real-world flight planning tool. It covers the entire world, but it's got, the nice thing about it is it's got the sector maps, or sectionals basically, of the US, for example. So you can see all of the beacons and everything, and you can actually, you can plot routes on here. So you could do a flight plan, and we could say, our tail number is, it wants me to log in, look. As soon as I try and do anything, it wants me to log in. You have to be careful with Sky Vector. If you go and file a flight in here, and then you actually go and, if you post it, which I think is a paid option actually, but it's a real flight plan. So you need to be careful, but you can certainly look at it and use it for free though. Just be careful what you click on, that you don't actually submit anything to anywhere. But it's very, very good. So yeah, you can get lots and lots of information about all of the resources around the sky, or around the map. So say we went to where should we go and look at? San Francisco Bay. Let's go and pull up the information on San Francisco International Airport. And you can see it's got tons and tons of information and lots of charts as PDF format. I think as soon as you try, it will open them. Of course, in the US, the charts are public, so you can see them. Whereas a lot of other areas around the world, charts are not owned by the public. So that's where Navigraph comes in. So if you were to look in ChartFox at US airports, you'll probably find the charts for them. Pilot Jacob's asking which airport we're going to in Tenerife. We're going to the south one because that's the one I've got the scenery for. So we go and look at the approach, so you can see the volcano in the middle there. So we're going to come around the edge past La Gomera, and then we're going to have some fun and games. I think by default the 747 is programmed to go into the hold, but we've got the ILS programmed in as well, so it's going to be using GPS to do that. We'll see how it goes. It may be that we can cut the corner and go manual or go heading mode as soon as we come out. Depends if we come into here to go into the hold. I think it's going to go direct to TFS. If we go and look at the legs again, we can confirm that. So if we go look at the legs, go Brick, Araco, Ganta, Bamel, D264J, CD07. See, these are interesting, aren't they? Can we see them more easily on LittleNavMap? Let's have a look. There's D264J. Okay, so it's going to enter the hold by going around the houses to get there. Yeah, so you can see it doing there. It goes through Bamel, then it goes and out to 264, then CD07, which is here. So it's going to come around here and then start going into the hold. So if you go next page, look, you can see it goes TFS and hold at TFS. If we go and look on the hold page, the data is still in here. Look, has it got 74 degrees? as the entry angle, 73, so it's almost the same. So right turn, 74 degrees, and it's doing 1 minute legs. It's not going to do a 10-mile leg, so it's probably only going to do that short one, I guess. We'll see. We'll see when we get there. And then obviously while we're sat in the hold, we can get the ILS sorted out and come out of the hold when we choose to, and just fly in and land. Am I on VATSIM? No, I don't tend to use VATSIM. Well, I'm a member of VATSIM. I have used VATSIM in the past and I've done flights, but I very rarely record it because it's just an extra lot of hassle and I don't get to chat to people so easily. So I'd have to keep, muting, or sorry, switching over and pressing a different button to push to talk with VATSIM. Do I lock frames in the NVIDIA control panel or through the sim settings? Just through the sim. Where is the sim? There it is. That cloud was not in the forecast. So we're about, let's pull this down a bit, 320 miles, 300 miles out-ish. So we'll get there soon. I have no membership for SkyVector, it's free to join. You can plan flights in SkyVector without filing them, so you can just use it as a tool. Can I show you how to lock frames? Yeah, you just press escape, go to general options, go to, it's on the graphics, the first option, and it's here, look. Frame rate limit. They've changed the terminology. So my monitor refresh rate is 60 Hertz. So it's going to be 50% of the monitor refresh rate. So you've got various options in there. I'm not going to fiddle with it. But yeah, you'll know what your monitor is. Typically a monitor is 60 frames a second unless you've got an expensive monitor, which I can't see the point of. I think the higher refresh rates on monitors were invented to waste the money of people with more money than sense, but that's just me. Maybe I'm being unfair about that. It's worth pointing out I bought a new monitor a few months back, a bigger monitor, and I deliberately only bought a 1080p monitor. My graphics card can happily drive a 4K screen, but because most of the flying I do goes out to YouTube, I wanted it rendering at the same resolution I'm going to capture it at, and I'm not sending 4K videos to YouTube because I can't see the point. I only ever do 1080p, so I'm watching it on my screen here at 1080p, which means the graphics card doesn't have any extra burden to downrate that as it records it through OBS. And also when I'm streaming, you'll probably notice it's a lot smoother when I'm streaming than when I record a flight. And that's purely because I've got fibre to the house and it can send out that 1080p signal straight out of the graphics card without any bottlenecks. Whereas as soon as you're recording to storage, you've got all manner of bottlenecks around the storage mechanism. So it often can't even keep up with 30 frames a second 1080p. Yep, so Resets is on about he's got a fast monitor. It only really makes any difference at all if you're playing something like a shooter. But for anything else, it's like people saying that they can tell the difference between a CD and streamed music, or an audio file going on about a vinyl album versus a CD versus a streamed version. To 99.9% of the people, they don't really care because they're doing something else and it's just background music. It's the same thing, really. Or in my mind it is. My concern is not about the frame rate, it's about it being usable, and as long as it's usable, it's fine. The trouble is, it's as soon as you go down the resolution and frame rate rabbit hole, you're digging a very, very expensive hole for yourself. Where the line will keep moving. Oh, while we're here, and while we have some time, is anybody playing Starfield? I've been thinking about buying it and streaming, playing it, but I don't know if anybody else is playing it really. I gather lots and lots of people have gone and bought Starfield. Would I recommend turning on frame generation? What does frame generation do? Should we go and have a look? The ability to generate entirely new game frames and present those to the user to improve. Okay, so that's the. It's gone under many, many different acronyms. It's the same as the upscaling technology, isn't it? But they're doing it to do effectively what animators call tweening. So they're putting extra frames in between the ones that are being generated. So the graphics card has got enough horsepower left over to invent the in-between frames. Yeah, frame interpolation. So it looks at 2 frames and makes the in-between frame. An optical flow. God, they give these some stupid names, don't they? Fluid motion. So what they're really doing is using a little bit of AI to figure out, but from one frame to another, or over a series of frames, where should the in-between frames be. It's the same way that you get like old movie footage that was only recorded at maybe 10 frames a second or 8 frames a second, and they do in-betweening on it to turn it into 60 frames per second and 4K and all the rest of it. Yeah, so reading Gravguard's comments about Starfield, that's what I was worried about. I don't want to go and invest a load of time in a game that isn't really that much good. I played Elite quite a lot, Elite Dangerous, for about a week. And then I'd figured out the game mechanics and it kind of became boring. And I think since the online databases for Elite Dangerous have died, the reasons, well, it's not really a cheat, but without having the stock market information, it made Elite Dangerous a grind instead of fun. So, do I ever suffer with screen tearing? No. To get rid of screen tearing, you need to have VSync switched on, which means that the rendering pipeline is synchronized with the the refresh rate of your screen, so it will never be halfway through drawing something when the screen displays it. Simon Crocker, stick with Flight Sim. I will do some DCS videos soon. I've got a couple of aeroplanes with it I've really not touched. I've got the F-16 and the Tomcat, and I've really not touched them. So I'll do some dogfights over the Nellis range with them and have some fun. I used to play DCS quite a lot, and I've just fallen out of the habit because there's so many good things and fun things to play with in Flight Sim. So I never actually set out to start a YouTube channel. I was just sharing a few videos with some friends, and after about, I don't know, a year of those videos being sat there, YouTube emailed me one day and said, "You have enough subscribers to monetize." And I was like, pardon? And I had to find out what all of that meant, and that led down a bit of a rabbit hole really, and it's become not really a second stream of income, but a useful pocket money source, which allows me to buy aeroplanes. It's kind of a what's the term? A self-perpetuating Oh, I can't remember what the exact phrase is. But yeah, so the more, obviously the more money that the advertising in YouTube paid, the more aeroplanes I can buy. So often people will say, how on earth can you afford to buy the aeroplanes? Well, you guys watching the videos is paying for me to buy the aeroplanes. Just reading Eric's comments there about Starfield, I suspected that about it, that it's a Bethesda game at the end of the day, and it's going to look like an open world, but it's not. Whereas Elite really was an open world, but it was obviously seeded. I have got No Man's Sky. Sorry, I've got No Man's Sky. I've not really played it a lot. I ought to go back to that. But again, once I'd figured the mechanic out of how it did things, it seemed like just a bit of a grind, really. I guess that's no different to things like Minecraft, where people, once you know the mechanic of the game, you can just go and spend an hour chilling out with it, sort of noodling around as a distraction from everything else. Have I considered something like Neoflight? No, I've never bothered, because, I don't know, was it a year ago, 18 months ago, I built a virtual airline. So rather than go and get a game, I built a virtual airline for lots of other people to play at being pilots, I guess. But that kind of modified or transformed over time. So we took an off-the-shelf product called VA Base, and rather than go down the strict airline route with it, with the ranks and the aircraft and everything, we just filled it up with loads of tours. So people could have it as a way of picking nice places to go fly. And it has an ACARS client, which lets you, it judges you on a few different criteria. It's not tremendously accurate or valid in what it judges you on, but it gives people something to focus on. But yeah, it's interesting. I have been thinking, because I'm a software developer, a web developer in the real world, I have been thinking about building my own virtual airline solution as part of Virtual Flight Online. So rather than using an off-the-shelf solution, actually build my own, and probably build it all around tours, but let the members make their own tours as well. So, we would basically have a community of people sharing flight plans with each other, that you can go fly and track that you have flown a route. So you're just reading Eric's comment there about No Man's Sky. It is very, very good. And Simon's saying, I'm a member of VFO, having a blast doing all the tours. Yeah, so if I do build my own virtual airline, it really won't be a virtual airline in the normal sense. It will be if you use Transmitter, if you've seen Transmitter, it will be Transmitter version 2, essentially, will be the client. It will only use SimConnect. There will be no need to run anything in the background. And yeah, you'll be able to pick or invent tours, or pick legs of tours other people have made, and go fly them, and have all sorts of badges that you can get, we'll invent badges for distance covered, areas of the world visited, all the things you might imagine that you could do, first flights, 10th flights, 100th flights. Could also have all sorts of badges for maximum, for the amount of cargo you've carried on a flight or in a month. There's all sorts of games we could play with giving out badges, so people can, have achievements, a number of passengers carried, and I'll have to look into Sim Connect though to see what data it lets you know about an active flight. If somebody changes aeroplane mid-route, for example, you could play games with saying how many passengers did they take off versus they landed with. But yeah, we could have a rank system. I'm not sure it would do anything more than just kudos really though. Just to say, you know, maybe have some sort of artificial algorithm that figures out number of hours flown, number of types of aircraft flown, and, you know, put all the numbers into a big algorithm that gives you some sort of kudos number. Experience versus breadth of experience then. There's some sort of multiplier. Why didn't I install a livery for the 747? I can't see the point because I'm sat inside. You can't see the outside when you're inside. No, I get that people like having their liveries and stuff, but I always fly from the cockpit, so... We are very fortunate with Virtual Flight Online. There's a wonderful guy called Mr. O online that has created lots and lots of liveries for us. He's very, very good. If we go and have a look, actually, while we're flying along, we've got a little while yet. If we go to flightsim.2 and search for Mr. O. There we go, there's one of the liveries, but there's some that are the corporate colours. There we go, there's one. So, yeah, he's done the official colour schemes for the aeroplanes. I drew up the pattern for him to follow, and he basically went and did loads of aeroplanes using the corporate colour scheme for Virtual Flight Online. We've got various charter companies within the airline. So World, Express, Business, things like that. So how do we get back to his other stuff that he's built? Mr. O, here we go. So he's been branching out doing stuff for other people, but yeah, you can see another one there, look. There's an ATR livery, same scheme. It's very cool. So anybody that is into liveries, we do have them for the airline. If you've not seen it, if you're just watching this, if you go to virtualflight.online, this is the community I started not long after I started using Flight Sim, because I wanted a community, and the official one, Flight Simulator at Discord, was an absolute nightmare with, you know, people abusing each other and shouting and screaming, swearing and all the rest of it. So we made a community, or I started a community of flight simulator enthusiasts and aviation enthusiasts. So it's got its own Discord server, which is here. There's over 2,000 members. Yeah, we played around with having a forum. It wasn't as popular as Discord, so we dropped the forum. It's got a reference book, so the codex. It's got all the stuff about that we do. So we do group flights every Sunday. Well, group flights throughout the week actually, but the biggest group flight each week is on a Sunday. There's the details about the virtual airline. So how to get started, how to install the ACARS software, how the rank structure works, how your flights are scored by the ACARS software. So now and again we do ATC. We've got a couple of members who are practiced air traffic controllers, and they will guide, you know, newbies to air traffic control, so it's a bit of an on-ramp for people who might be looking towards VATSIM in the future. We allow anybody to invite others to fly with them in the Discord server, so we've obviously got chat rooms in the Discord server so you can fly along. We use Transmitter to do that. So Transmitter is a little program you can run that plots you on a map, and when you do it, you see a map. There we go, LittleNavMap makes little red aeroplanes appear in LittleNavMap, so you can see the other members of your group. There's also a Who is Online page at any time, which gives you another live view. So there's quite a few people using Transmitter at the moment. Look, and you can go and zoom in and see who any of those people are just by clicking on them. And there's a list of the people. Just for a bit of fun, it also shows you their last landing rate, so you can see if anybody's got a really high number. And they're actually quite good at the moment. Now and again you see one in the thousands and you think, oh dear, that didn't go very well, did it? So yeah, that's Virtual Flight Online. It's all free to join. We have got a paid Patreon page if anybody wants to support us in doing what we do. There's also a Facebook group. So if people like Facebook, they can use that. If they like Discord, they can use that. It's pretty straightforward stuff, really. Anyway, back to the flight. How are we doing? We're getting closer. So once we get a brick, we'll start thinking about descending. So we've got about 150 miles to go until we descend. Chugging along at 450 knots over the ground. And so far, this 747 seems to be behaving itself. So the person with the Russian name, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it, has just written flaps ? I don't quite understand why he's saying that. My flaps are up, as far as I'm aware. Stabilator trim, yeah, there's no flap indicator there. Continue auto brake off while we're in flight, I guess. And see, this won't let us turn it off even. Oh, it will. So this is new. This didn't used to be connected. It's now connected to the Airbus controller, so that's something else I might have to unwire for a profile just for the 747. Which is a bit of a shame. Shall we increase the range over on the Copilot display? It's quite good now that these are independent of each other. So we could put that onto approach mode, for example, or normally you'd put this on map mode and give it a sensible range, and then put this on approach mode, so you've got both while you're approaching the airport. And you would also play games, because these are independent, you can play games with leaving one of them on progress and the other one on the legs page, so you've got all of the information at your fingertips, just to glance at. We've left the APU running. We didn't really need it running, but I'm going to leave it on there because it's been on the whole time. It saves us switching it back on when we get on the ground. It'll be interesting actually. With the APU running, we may find there's a slight discrepancy in the fuel levels. Does this allow us to see? Total fuel. That's fascinating. I'm just wondering if the 747 has a way of showing you. There we go. Fuel levels across the tanks. So because we've left the APU on, no, they're broadly the same, look. You'd have expected the APU to feed from a specific tank. So you'd have one lower than the other. But that's not happening. Maybe that's not a concern in the 747. Interesting. So what else can we see on the screen? This is cool, isn't it? I've not really played with this before. gear state. And information, no info available. It's not implemented, obviously. Electricity system. Fuel we just saw. The ECS. Very good. It's the environmental control system, by the way. Then the flight control system. So which system is being used? There's lots of redundancy built into the big aeroplanes. So you can control which screen and what you're seeing there. So if we went to engineering, which would be the default view, you get that. Very good. How are we doing? My daughter has gone to watch the rugby this afternoon. I'm not sure if it's being televised or not. The StoneX Stadium. See if the BBC are covering what's going on. Rugby Union. Both my daughters play rugby, so. England score 5 tries in win over 14-player Canada. Oh dear. (29-12). So they'll be happy. Am I excited for the TBM 850? I'd forgotten all about it, to be honest. I guess we'll wait and see what happens. Isn't the Duke coming out as well from Black Square, isn't it? I remember the Duke in P3D, or Prepare 3D, or Prepared, how people say it. So we should, at some point, yeah, we can just see Tenerife out in the distance. Now I've got the global shipping add-on, so we should see some ships as well. Not sure if we'll see them just yet, but if we go in here and open window layout, go for the default and turn the ships on, it renders them near you, doesn't it? I'm not sure if Flight Sim re-renders ground traffic during a route. So whether we'll suddenly get a constellation of ships appear near Tenerife, I'm not sure. So we're inside the 100-mile mark now. Eye on Tenerife in the distance as we get closer. quite cool, isn't it, seeing the outline of the island appearing in the far distance. So Wheels Up is asking why steam gauges are still a thing. Because people like them. Now, it's an interesting question actually, because yeah, glass screens. This really goes back to the presentation that Apple did when they introduced the iPhone, isn't it? That a glass screen is much more flexible in terms of how it can be used and the information that can be presented, but it does actually have a huge downside as well. That there's no way of, if it was a touchscreen, for example, touchscreens are pretty much useless in working environments where you are being moved around, and that's for that very reason the Navy has moved away from them and are going back towards physical switches and knobs and controls for things, because they trialed glass touchscreens. I mean, okay, this isn't exactly the same argument of using a glass screen to give a flexible display over gauges, but they both have their place, I guess. That's all I'm really saying. Screens are great for presentation, they're not great for controlling things. Because we have, fingers on our hands that our senses are evolved for holding, twisting, turning, pressing, and for the reason all the switches have different shapes is on purpose. That's an ergonomic thing. So you can feel things in the dark, so you know what's where. That's the same reason the TV controllers have all sorts of different shape buttons. They're not just a uniform grid. It's because of the way our hands work. But yeah, I agree in terms of presenting information. The glass screens are very good. There is, I guess it's the academic part of it, isn't it, with gauges and dials and levers and switches, of understanding the machinery of it. Whereas with a computer, it's like looking at an engine of a car versus an electric car. There's a fascination in the way the engine works, which once you get to a certain level, all of that disappears, and it's just a black box. It's fascinating though, isn't it, on the glass screens, although that it could be presented in any way, most glass screens have unified on common ways of presenting certain types of information. So altitude ribbons, indicated airspeed ribbons, the attitude indicator, the compass rose, showing bar graphs for important numerical data rather than pies. It's interesting that, when you start looking and how they draw your attention to things, like putting boxes around things or changing their colour. You wouldn't believe the amount of study that was probably done with test groups around every little interface decision. There would have been no end. Look at the mess this has made of the approach, by the way. So it's got the hold, but it's a very short hold, and obviously the turning circle of a 747 is enormous, so it looks a bit crazy. So we'll try and come straight in if we can and not do the hold. So when we get past Brick, we'll start descending. You know, come down a little bit early, give ourselves some time. Right, because that top of descent is based on us going into the hold, and we're not going to. I mean, okay, it'd be fun from an academic point of view to fly the hold, but there isn't really much benefit in it for us. So there's the island. The airports are on the back side of the island from our approach. If you see here, we're approaching from the north, and the airfield is exactly the opposite side of the island from where we are right now. So we just get past Brick and then we'll start descending, so we can go and choose an altitude to get to, I guess. Let's go down to 10,000 feet because that's the point we'll need to slow down. So that makes it nice and easy for us to just get to 10,000. Let's have a look also on Navigraph and say if we are going to fly that bit, but then what I was actually looking for here, yeah, we go, transition altitude 6,000 feet, so that tells us what we need to know there. Also, let's have a look, so this is a little bit out of date now, but not too badly. 1018 hectopascals, or 3006 inches for the barometric pressure when we get to 10,000. Okay. So we'll come off VNav mode in a moment and just use vertical speed to drop down. Oh, I just need to answer the phone. I'll just knock my microphone off. Okay, I have my instructions to start cooking dinner in about half an hour. Okay, we're just coming up to Brick. So, how shall we descend? We could go for flight level change. Let's see how quickly it will do it actually. So let's go and do that. So we're in LNAV mode now, lateral navigation. Obviously the throttles are cutting back so it can descend, so we're going to come down, it's looking at about 20, it comes down quickly doesn't it, 3,000 feet a minute, that's impressive. That would give us a nice pass of the island actually. Does this have terrain mode working by the way? Are we going to see the shape of the island suddenly appear? Or it should only be one side of it, shouldn't it, if radar's working as it should? Oh, the sim has just stalled. And it's come back again. Yeah, so rather than this have fun and games trying to go into a hold, we're just going to go direct, so we'll cut that whole corner off. So let's reduce the range on this a bit. We'll see everything come into view in a moment. Okay, we're getting into the business end of the flights at last. So we'll carry on flat out, or 300 knots at 10,000 feet until we choose to descend, then we'll decelerate and manage our descent down. So yeah, flight level change is doing this at quite a nice rate for us actually. – 2,300 feet a minute at the moment. So it's going to get to 10,000 about Araco, yeah. So we'll be at 10,000 by the time we get there, then we can decelerate and then drop down, follow the route round. So we probably want to be about, we want to be at 2,800 feet above the airfield. Sorry, 2,500 feet when we get to, what does this actually say? 2,600 feet. Obviously that's going to be 100 feet then, altitude over the sea, I guess. At airfield elevation. Has it got it written in anywhere? I mean, you can find it out very, very quickly by looking on LittleNavMap. Sophia, 200 feet. Okay, so we want 2,700 feet, ideally. And this is looking for 2,600 feet when you get to 10 miles out, which is at the beginning of the feathers, which puts you below the glide slope. So if you come in level at 2,600, then you'll meet the glide slope from underneath, which means approach mode will not be a problem. Simon Crocker needs to get his camera out and go and take some pictures of that Spitfire. So Spyroth is saying, how many hours did it take you? I have no idea. So LittleNavMap is suggesting this is going to take 2¼ hours for the whole flight, which is probably exactly what it took, because I'm using the performance data for the 7478. So it's probably quite accurate. I don't think there's a chronometer built into this aircraft. Some of the airplanes have got chronometers on the cockpit, which are useful for timing holds and things, but they also have a mode where they just do like a trip timer as well. Okay. So there is Tenerife. That's La Gomera. Or is that it? Oh, I can never get this right. I always forget. Yeah, the little one is La Gomera. So we're just following the route down, coming down to 10,000 feet, and then we'll look at descending to about 2,600 feet for the final turn towards the airfield, and getting our speed down as well at the same time. And then obviously it's a question of managing flaps, gear, lights, speed, getting in the right place and following in to the runway. Should be fairly straightforward. So Bo Adam Iden is saying, hey man, how are you? I'm good. I think COVID has gone through our entire house the last week, so I have a funny feeling while I was running, doing this 1,000-kilometer challenge thing over the last month, I had COVID in the middle of that, because I had what I thought was a head cold for about 4 weeks, and I suspect now it was COVID, because the rest of the family have gone down with COVID over the last week and recovered from it. So I'm still getting a bit of a bad throat, but maybe it's having another bite out of me, you never know. So, I was just watching a video about 747 and how to start it. It's not too bad, it's just following procedure really. It all makes sense once you realise how all these big aeroplanes work. You just need power to fire systems up. You need a means of spooling the engines up. Some of them are electrical, like the BAE 146. Some of them use compressed air, like the Boeings and the Airbuses. The compressed air is generated by an auxiliary power unit, which is a small jet engine in the tail usually. Once you've got the engines up and running, you can use that for power for the aeroplane, and you can switch off the APU. I've left the APU on this flight, by the way. And then once you've got power, internal power, as they would call it on a spacecraft, you're just looking at programming the flight computer, and well, you can do that before you start the engines usually. Normally you wouldn't start the engines until you're pushed back, so you're away from the ground crew. It always becomes a bit of a struggle in the simulator actually if you are doing pushback, because you've got two people in the real aircraft and the pushback is performed autonomously to you, so you're not able to control it. Therefore you can get on with starting the engines while the pushback tug is pushing you, across the ground. The FMS, it's a Boeing FMS. It's quite straightforward, I thought, but that's just me. It's because I'm used to them. Experience is everything. The more times you do it, the more times you'll realise how it works. I've got several videos on YouTube how the Boeing FMSs work. More about the 737 than the 747, but they work very similar to each other. And again, once you understand how one of them works in the family, it makes sense for the others. So you've got your route information page, you've got the departure arrival information, you've got the legs page, you've got the performance data, or init ref as it calls it. Once you get those basics in, and once you get used to filling them in, the Boeings help you a lot by pre-calculating things like the zero fuel weight. If you've got an operational flight plan, which you can get from Simbrief for free, that will give you all the accurate numbers for things like the the cost index and the cruise level, things like that. So we're almost down to 10,000 feet. So it wants us above 6,000 at this turning point. Let's go and have a look at the chart. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because some charts have got more than others. And it hasn't actually got the restriction on it. It's got the 6,000 foot for the hold at Bamel, but it hasn't actually got a restriction written in blue, which you normally would see. So it just shows that you can't always trust what LittleNavMap tells you. Okay, so the aeroplane has stopped descending. You can hear the throttles coming up to maintain speed. So if we look sideways, there's La Gomera, there's Tenerife. We're about to do a 90-degree left turn. So we'll come down to 6,000 feet. But before we can do that, we need to get to 250 knots. So we'll just let the aeroplane coast back to 250. We won't force the issue. It's going to go through a turn anyway, which will scrub some speed off. So you can see it's actually losing speed easily anyway. So if we look down here, Yeah, look, now we have cut the speed a bit. This is looking a bit more sensible. So it was basing these radiuses on the speed we are doing right now. So as we get slower, these radiuses are starting to look a lot more sensible. So if we imagine coming into here at 160, 170 knots, we'll make that turn easily to line up with the runway. So that's another thing. I guess the more study level of these become, because they have got speeds, look, programmed in, which we could have implemented, or we could have influenced, sorry. So it's saying 230 knots when we get to the hold. We won't be doing 230. We'll make that turn a lot slower than that. Right, get ready for the turn. Any moment. We're doing 250 knots now, so we can begin coming back down to 6,000 feet at the same time we make the turn. It'd be nice actually to see the island from... Should we use vertical speed this time just to show that we can? So there's the green banana. We're just coming down at 1,000 feet a minute. Look outside, you'll see there's La Gomera and there's Tenerife will swing into view as we come around the corner. So let's reduce the range on this again to give us a better understanding of where we are. So we're going to come into here at 6,000 and we want to drop basically 3,000 feet, just over 3,000 feet as we make this turn, which is only a few miles. So it might be, to do this shortcut that we're talking about doing, might be quite challenging, but we'll see. It might work out. So we'll lose some more speed on the way across here. So we come into here at the right speed for finals, or just a little bit above. Got a few minutes yet as we pass by. Got about 30 miles to go at 250 knots. Am I using a yoke or a controller? Oh yes, good point. We don't. 6,000 feet is the transition altitude. Just reading the comments. We don't need to do that just yet. Just to remind ourselves though, we need 1018 or 30.06. It's on inches, so it'll be 30.06. So once we get to 6,000 feet, we need to change away from standard barometric pressure to local to the airport. Sorry, I was answering about the controller. I've got an Airbus, Thrustmaster Airbus stick and quadrant, which doesn't really help with Boeing's, because a lot of the switches are wrong. And the terrain is now working, look, you can see it drawing the island in. So red is at the same altitude as us, or you know, it's threatening a collision. So Adam says, hi, how are you? I'm very good, thank you. Oh my word, there's 50 people watching this. I better not stuff the landing up, eh? Since I've landed, I need to go and make dinner. I'm making spaghetti bolognese for the family this evening. They've been out watching the England ladies rugby team play against Canada in a friendly, I believe. I don't quite understand how rugby can ever be friendly, but It's a bit misty, isn't it? So we are approaching 6,000 feet, so let's go and switch over to, now what was it? 30.06. Yeah, it's not far out, look, it's 30.12 at the moment. Which puts us back at 6,000, which is what we were at originally. Is that synchronized, by the way? So 30.06, I bet this one isn't. Yeah, so... is it 1018? So we're chugging along at 50 knots, 6,000 feet. We'll drop back a bit slower as we get closer, or just reduce our speed, I should say. Have I ever flown on Egyptian Airlines? No, I haven't. I've never been to Egypt. My other half has. Before we met, she went on a holiday and travelled along the Nile on a felucca, I think it's called. And visited, you know, obviously a lot of the common places people visit, like Aswan and Luxor, Cairo, obviously. Okay, that was interesting. I think the controls just glitched, and I'm wondering what they're doing. Why has that happened? The throttle's just kicked in, even though the auto throttle is on. What happened? I mean, I've gone back to manual control and it's almost like the auto throttle just failed. But there's no warning about that having happened. Let's go and... they're working again now, look. Just cycled it, so there's bugs in this still. So we need to keep an eye on it. I had manual control of the throttles then, even though the auto throttle was armed. So let's zoom in again on the map. This radius will come down, as we said. So let's go and slow the aeroplane down now. Or I'm presuming the radius will change. Let's see if that is actually what happens. Yeah, look, the radius is changing as the speed drops off. Interesting. So we can now go for first level of flaps. We can also, that's interesting, Nick. So we've got the gear down early, which gives us lots of drag to make this descent in time. So we're going to come down to 3,000 feet. Or 2,700, wasn't it? 2,600, something like that. Oops, it's gone too far now. It's 2,600. Let's see what rate we need to come down at then to make that happen. A bit more than 1,000 then. Keeping an eye on the airspeed and the throttles to make sure it can still do it. It's still on auto throttle, remember. That's looking a lot better, isn't it? Going for 20 degrees of flaps as we approach the right speed for that, so let's go for 170. You can see the lights at the end of the runway over there. So let's zoom in on this side. So we can see the map, same as this side, and then we'll go for approach mode on this side. And hopefully when we make the turn, we should pick up the ILS. Because we've got the nav radios tuned in to 109.7, 73 degrees, which is 109.7, 73 degrees. So we're just approaching here, look. We're about to make the turn, so there goes the flight director making the turn happen. We can see the map over this side, we can see the approach. Flight director's on. Why are we not seeing the... Oh, we're still 10 miles out though, aren't we? We might not pick the signal up straight away, or it might not work. Because I have kind of hacked the flight management computer to say, no, we're doing what we want rather than what it wants. So maybe it won't. Normally you'd expect to pick the signal up. We've got signal showing here though, but it's just not on here, which is interesting. There's the runway, directly in front of us. There's the marker for the glide slope. We're on the localizer, but they're not showing on this display. So maybe it's not quite clever enough. With this ILS saying park, maybe it's not going to do it. Because earlier on we said 109.70 and it wouldn't let us put that into ILS, would it? So we won't worry about it now. We can see enough here to manage the landing anyway. I'm a bit busy to read comments at the moment, I do apologise. So we'll flight level and I'll disengage the autopilot when we have confirmed that we've actually... No, this is... I'm disengaging autopilot now. That's fine. Auto throttle's still on. It was going to go and do the hold. I don't want it to. I'd forgotten about that it still had the hold programmed in on the lateral navigation. Let's just climb gently into this glide slope and see if it's actually there, or if that's some sort of ghost signal. Otherwise we'll just come in visually. We're about in the right place. I'm amazed that hasn't come down. Yeah, that is not the localizer then. Okay, so yeah, the ILS isn't working. We're going to have to just be visual, which is fine. Auto throttle off. So where we tried to hack the 747 FMC to force it onto an ALS, it really didn't like it, for whatever reason.
2,500.
But these are both reading now, which is interesting. We've just got no signal showing up on the ILS itself. A little bit off to the right. Let's be careful about getting too slow. We're full flaps now. Now, at what point will it start stuttering as it draws the traffic on the ground at the airport? Or the airport itself, I should say. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have PAPI lights, which would be a great help to us. Here comes the stuttering. It's starting to draw the airport. Yeah, you can see the gates and everything have just been drawn in. Ideally, I think you need to be 50 feet over the apron and then try to hit the markers. It's a little bit of a crosswind, but not too much.
100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Okay, so we do have reversers. And we can put the spoilers out as well. Doesn't slow them down in a hurry, does it? So we go for wheel brakes as well. We can use a high-speed exit then. The new 747 takes a lot longer to slow down than it used to, which apparently is accurate, so flaps can come up and the spoilers can go away. The landing lights. Oh, I didn't put landing lights on. Whoops. The strobes can go back to off. It's a bit of an uphill taxiway here. Yeah, so it just shows that you can't then hack the FMC just to force an ILS onto it, and it doesn't really understand trying to programming anything into it. So unless you've got it on your flight plan, you can't really reprogram the landing system easily. Find somewhere to park. Welcome to Tenerife, ladies and gentlemen. Put the head tracking back on. Wave to the tower. It's a Wizz airplane. What else is there? Avianca, LATAM. I'm guessing the bigger gates at the far end, but we can go in here, can't we? Probably, if we're careful. Okay, parking brake on. We should be able to just... I've got the APU already running, remember, so we can just shut the engines down. Strobes are off, nav lights off, beacon off. That was beacon was not on correctly, was it? Interesting. I thought I did that at the start. But yeah, I'm not going to go through the whole shutdown sequence. Let's have a look from outside. It's cool, isn't it, seeing it from inside the terminal? There's me taking my picture. Very cool. It's the holiday maker viewpoint. And there's the queue. Rest assured, it's a lot busier than this in the real place. It's just a sea of people everywhere. So there we go, hopefully you enjoyed that. And I'll see you again soon. I have to go and make dinner. Oh dear, another flight in the books. That was from, where did we fly from? Lisbon to Tenerife today in the 747. So yeah, I guess the major takeaway is the FMC really didn't like us programming the ILS directly into the VOR radios. It wanted this to come from the flight plan. So we could have got away with that by reprogramming the flight plan for the ILS approach and then correcting any discontinuities. But we tried to shortcut it to see if we could, and we couldn't. It wouldn't let us. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you again soon.